Did you guys watch the fight last night? Mike
We
Tyson?
didn't. We were going to, but then we ended up watching a movie instead.
What'd you watch?
Knives Out.
Oh, that's a
Well,
great movie.
yeah, it was really entertaining.
And what'd you think? Had you seen it?
No, I hadn't seen it before, but I really liked it. It was clever and funny at the same time. Wasn't expected.
Yeah, it's one of the only movies I can think of that by the end I was legitimately surprised by the twist,
Yeah.
you know? Cuz like every time you watch a mystery movie, it kind of like falls into like a couple categories where you're like either it's, the person that I least expect, or it's someone I have no idea was even a character, or this was all a dream. It's like it's pretty hard to think of an ending to a murder mystery movie that actually surprises you. But that one was good. That one was like way surprising.
Yeah. It's really funny too.
Yeah. And yeah, it is funny. And there's like the racist uncle and stuff. Isn't there that like a grandma who's looking through the window or something and actually sees the girl like like when she's running away after she like killed the guy? She like sees the girl, but she's like totally senile, so she doesn't know it's her or something.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that is funny. Did
What's
you
that
hear
first
what
one?
happened in the fight?
I don't know. I didn't hear.
It was nuts. So, do you know who Jake Paul is?
Yeah. The
YouTuber.
YouTube guy.
Yeah. He fought Nate Robinson, who, do you know who that is? He's a basketball player. He was a really
Yeah.
short guy that won the dunk contest a bunch of times.
Okay.
Well, they fought, and Jake Paul, who is not a professional athlete, like embarrassed him. He like wrecked Nate Robinson. Yeah, it was weird. He knocked him out like cold. And Nate was like super aggressive and super quick, and like you could tell because he's played professional basketball and professional football. And Jake Paul is just like a YouTuber, right? And he like totally owned him. And then Mike Tyson's fight was cool too. He was like just as ferocious as ever. Oh my gosh. He's 54 years old. He's like the same age as dad. And he's out there just like raining shots on this guy. It was insane. He's a beast.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was nuts. But makes you like realize how, like, if you were to actually get in a fight with someone who knew what they were doing, they could really mess you up.
Yeah. Have you seen that super viral MMA highlight where the guy like kicks and the other guy catches his foot and he like spins around and kicks him with his other foot in the face and knocks him out?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I've seen that. It's like right out of like Dragon Ball Z.
Right? It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he like catches his one foot, so he like flips on the other side and knocks him out. And he like knocks him out cold, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, MMA, I don't know. I don't know if I have the stomach to watch MMA. It is like so brutal.
Yeah.
When you
Fun,
were
fun to watch.
it is really fun. When you were on your mission, I don't know if you heard about like all the Conor McGregor fights that happened.
Mm-mm.
You know Conor McGregor?
Yeah.
So he was probably pretty big when you left, but like the Mayweather fight, were you here for the Mayweather fight?
Yeah. I think that was pretty soon before I left.
Okay, so that was the big one. But he also had another fight with a guy named Cowboy Cerrone, and that was like his big comeback. He'd been out for like a couple years, and Cowboy, I don't know a lot about MMA, but I know Cowboy was like a all-time great, has like the record for most fights or something, really tough looking dude. Anyway, Connor knocked him out in literally like 13 seconds. It was
Crazy.
nuts. He came in and they like hugged. You know how they do that? He like jumped at him with a knee and they ended up hugging. And so he like started hitting him with his shoulder and like broke his nose with his shoulder. So he's like falling back and then he was like, trying to fix his nose and then he just knocks him out. It was nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah, seriously. And then he lost. His big loss was to, I think it's pronounced Khabib.
Hmm. He's a like Russian guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, so is he like a Russian hero? I mean, you were in Russia for 2 years.
Yeah, everybody started wearing the big hats, you know. So I see a lot of people wearing those. People, yeah, people really liked him.
What's the
Also,
story? Do you know what's the
I don't know. I think it's like sheep wool or something. Because I know we made a friend who worked at a hat shop in the market, and he sold those kind of hats there. He's like, yeah, see this? Like this is the same kind that Khabib wore. I'm like, oh, cool. I think I'm not gonna buy it, but thanks.
Thanks. You look like a cartoon character, but cool.
Yeah. Actually, one of my companions met a guy who was Habib's neighbor in Moscow.
Hmm. What did he say about him? Was he a good neighbor?
I don't know.
Um, he is like the most stereotypical like Russian fighter. Like there's footage of him when he was a kid, I guess like wrestling a baby bear. Have you seen that?
Awesome though.
Yeah, and like his dad, there's a footage of him like swimming across like a frozen river or something to train, and like yeah, like bare knuckle boxing in the cold forest, and like one of those guys that it's
Yeah.
just, you hear someone's Russian and you immediately have all these stereotypes, and then you hear about a guy like this who actually, it's like tough as nails. It's just funny. Probably eats like beef jerky as his bubble gum.
Did I ever tell you about the workout place in the forest when I was living in Moscow?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I remember it briefly. Tell me about it.
So we only went a couple times, but basically it was by this frozen lake in the middle of a forest, kind of in the like the east of Moscow. And when you're in there, it doesn't feel like you're in a city, even though it's one of the biggest cities in the world, but it just feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. And then you ran along this trail for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And there's this little pond, kind of like lake. It's completely frozen over, but there are these a bunch of old dudes that would poke a hole in the ice, get down to Speedos, and then jump into the water at like 6 a.m. in the winter. And so it's just so cold. And then they had all these bench presses and squatting racks made from car axles.
Oh my gosh.
So you go and you bench press just like this axle for a car, and they different size vehicles for heavier weights. And it was like there were other ones that people had made out of just like sticks with these huge like logs on either side. It was it felt like Rocky when he
Seriously,
trained.
that is like right out of Rocky, and it's like actually outside in Russia by a frozen lake. That is nuts.
Yeah, it was a cool place.
That's super cool. Did you get any pictures of it?
I wish I had a picture. I know some people had pictures. Maybe I'll see if I can snag one.
That is
Yeah.
so awesome. Oh my gosh, I want to go there at least once, even if you don't like. It just feels like just being there would make your testosterone go up.
Yeah.
It's just like a bear wandering through, midway through the workout.
That'd be pretty crazy. Yeah.
That's so cool. Was Russia like how it's portrayed, you think?
Um, I mean, there's certainly a lot of truth to it, to the portrayals, but I wouldn't say completely. A lot of the stuff is kind of hammed up for, for movies and stuff, like they do with everything. But
Yeah. What do you
there's definitely a lot
think?
of true aspects.
Yeah, what would you say was accurate and what wasn't?
Um, Accurate. People don't really smile on the streets unless it's like your friend, you
Hmm.
know them, and they would smile. So I would always get really strange looks for smiling at strangers on like the subway or buses and stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
I wonder why that is. Is the cold like play a part in that? Is it genetic? Is it just like years of people acting a certain way has just like trained the community to be that way, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Um, I know in the winter when it would get really cold, my first winter was colder than the second one, but there was one time we were walking around for several hours outside, and it actually did. It hurt to smile.
Like, I can't afford these muscles right now. That is so funny. It hurt to smile.
Yeah, because you just like clench your jaw and shiver a little bit.
I remember hearing that you said something about how like you can't buy American um, jackets and like winter gear. You have to go to Russia and buy the gear in Russia because like it's like we don't even have gear good enough to withstand the Russian cold here. You can only buy it there.
Yeah, most of the coats that I saw here were pretty wimpy, and so the one I had there, I wish I had brought it home, but I left it. It was super warm. It was probably like that thick. I don't know if you can see like that. And then I had a hood with real fur around it, like fox fur around the edge of the hood.
Mhm.
It was a nice coat.
Really, the only thing I know about Russia I've learned from Rocky and from Anastasia.
Yeah. I
Oh, was
mean,
she? She's the like the princess of Russia, like in the 1800s or something. Is that it?
yeah. So the last king of Russia, I think it was Nikolai II, right
Hmm.
before the revolution, the communist revolution. It was his daughter, and so the revolutionaries murdered the whole family, except they apparently didn't find her body. So that's where the legend came up of her still being alive.
So like, what do we think happened then if they never found her body? Like, what's the prevailing theory?
I don't know. I've read a little bit about it. Um, there are rumors of like they actually did find her remains, but they weren't sure if it was her, or I think like they had family in France because the Russian monarchy was kind of mixed with the French and stuff like that, and so she might have escaped to France, lived with relatives there. So
Hmm. So it was the monarchy and then the communist revolution. And then was that led by Stalin?
I think the original revolution was led by Lenin, and then Stalin took over.
Did Stalin have, so did he have to overthrow Lenin or were they one and the same? Like was that like his predecessor or was that his enemy?
I think it was just his predecessor.
Okay, so Lenin was the first and he was the communist that overthrew the monarchy and then Stalin just like followed in his footsteps.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I need to check my history, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know a lot about Russian history, but I find communist history very interesting, especially Russian and like German. Not that it's communist, but German history. Like when things go so wrong, it's very interesting to me to look at the roots of why they went wrong. Like, for example, when they overthrew the monarchy and they created communists, my guess is that the monarchy had like a huge wealth disparity, right? Probably it's like they probably overthrew Anastasia's dad because there was like a big wealth gap. That's my guess. Really, really poor people, really, really rich people. Then they created communism. And that's kind of what people want to do right now, not as dramatic, but like people want democratic socialism and stuff like that. And it's in large part due to the wealth gap that we have now. So it kind of freaks you out sometimes if you think about it.
yeah, it's very interesting. There's the joke that people say, the only thing wrong with communism is they had the wrong leaders. But the thing is, it's kind of true. There's always people that are kind of hungry for power, and that like yeah, there was disparities between the monarchy and the whatever the peasantry, and then so they thought that socialism and communism would be a proper response, but then they just created different disparities in a different way.
Yeah. Instead of a disparity based on a system of meritocracy, for better or for worse, And I don't know enough about Russia. I'm sure that there was corruption. So it's not just like a pure meritocracy with a monarchy, especially with a monarchy as opposed to capitalism. Like a monarchy kind of is like, hey, we're the top because we are the top. But in capitalism, it's like we have a monarchy almost, but it's the big business, like Jeff Bezos is the king, you
Mhm.
know. But it's based off of the wealth that he's generated rather
Yeah,
than, and you can, I guess, argue that that's moral or not moral, or he got lucky or whatever. That's fine. But as opposed to communism, where you elect the person who's going to be at the top, rather than having it be based on who created the most value, it's just like, okay, this guy is now in charge and he will decide how much resources everyone gets and how much wealth everyone gets. And I just feel like it's like, who are the, who do you appoint? That's the biggest problem. Who do you appoint? Who are the
right.
angels that are, flawless, that are going to be able to totally decide how the wealth is distributed? And not only that, but like what resources people want. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know.
But capitalism is really the more democratic because people are basically voting for who they want to be rich by what they buy.
Hmm.
Jeff Bezos wouldn't be a billionaire if people didn't want to buy what he had. If people
Yeah.
weren't willing to pay for it, other people.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, and if people weren't willing to endorse it, then he wouldn't be rich.
Yeah. It's more, I mean, it's not perfect, but maybe I just don't understand it because I've had so many people try and explain to me why socialism would be better, but I can't see how capitalism just seems like how you would default if you just let people act in their own nature. It's like socialism seems like it's going in the face of human nature. It's like people there, if you have a society, there's a million different opinions and perspectives and people that are all acting in their own self-interest. And so, yeah, you're right. You cast a vote for Jeff Bezos when you buy something on Amazon. You cast a vote for, Apple or Microsoft or whatever. And that's why they're big. They didn't steal it from anyone. They didn't they didn't poach it. And we actually have laws so that you can't, there's predatory pricing. You can't do a lot of those things. So
Mhm.
I can't see in my head, capitalism seems much more altruistic. Like it's a fair exchange or else you don't buy it.
Yeah, it it kind of reminds me of the. Have you read Animal Farm from George Orwell?
No, I haven't. I've heard a lot about it. I should.
It's pretty short. I just listened to the audiobook. It took like 3 hours. But at the beginning, they wanted to overthrow the humans running the farm because like, oh, they're oppressing us. Um, they have all this power and we have none. And so the pigs take charge and they overthrow the humans and they take control of the farm. But now then the pigs are in charge. And at the end of the book, it's not really a spoiler, but at the end of the book, the other animals kind of look through the window of the farmhouse and they see the pigs conversing with the humans, and they're not able to tell the difference between which ones are pigs and which ones are humans. So it's kind of like any way the power shifts, there are going to be people that take advantage of it.
Hmm. That makes me think of defund the police, right? Because it's so funny. It's like, why do we have these people that are appointed or whatever that have so much power? They come and they have guns and they have power and they have authority over us. We need to get rid of them. A lot of people are like, yeah, you're right. They're just like people, just like us. Let's get rid of them. It's like, okay, no more police. And in the meantime, to keep order, we made a special group of people that are citizens. We're going to have them wear special badges, which ones are the special ones, and we're going to give them guns, but not police. Don't worry. Like, it seems like in, did you hear about Chaz while you're on your mission?
I heard a little bit about it, and I read about it once I got home. But yeah, I was kind of gone for most of that.
Well, it's like that same kind of thing. It's like, well, we're gonna create a society that's above like an enlightened version of the society we have now. So we won't have police, or we won't have like hierarchy or whatever. And then like those things are just created because that's how you run a society. Like, how do you keep order without police? And like, oh, we won't keep police. We'll just like have some people that, we'll just like give AK-47s to a couple people, but like,
Yeah. I remember reading this article about some kind of vigilantes that took to the streets of Chaz. They're
mhm.
like, yeah, no more police. We're the police now. It's like, oh, wait, so there is police?
So you're the police, I guess. I mean, like, I get how the police aren't a perfect system, and I've heard a couple of arguments that make sense. Not defunding the police. I have not heard one argument of defunding the police that makes any sense. Because then it's just like, and then what? Like, who do the police protect? Like the police, people think that the police are like an asset to the upper class, um, which I guess is kind of true. But majority of crime doesn't happen in the upper class. It's like, you go to Beverly Hills, that's not where the police are always roaming. The police are roaming in the lower class. So that's who they're protecting. And like, anyway,
Mm.
I've heard, I think like reform makes sense to me. Like one thing an argument that I heard was that the police do too much, right? It's like, whoops, let me put that on silent. Um, it's like the police, if you have a drug problem, you got like a crackhead going crazy on the corner, you call the police. But also if there's like wild dogs, you call the police. And also if there's like a fire, you call the police. And all, like also if some angry customer at a grocery store is saying the F word too loud, you'd call the police. And so it makes sense that like the police can't just like know and be good at everything. Maybe there should be different factions of the police. Maybe they need more certification. We need to pay them more. I don't know. I think reform makes sense, but like abolishing, like what?
Yeah. I can definitely see both sides where I do think there could be some reform, like you were saying, some more training, maybe some longer training. But if that were to be the case, then you'd actually have to give more funding to the police to actually give them better training instead of taking funding away from the police.
I know. It's like those two thoughts can't coexist. It's like defund the police, but we need better police force.
Yeah.
I know. I think one of the things that came out of that whole time period was a lot of those causes accidentally reinforced the exact opposite of what they stand for. Like there's all these protests, violent protests about the police. And one of the things that makes people think is like, oh my gosh, look how susceptible we are to violence. We need more protection. We need more police, you know? And it's like, it seems to happen a lot, like a violent protest that's anti-gun makes people want to buy guns because it's a violent protest.
To protect themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I don't know the answer because I get that people, I used to think protests were dumb, to be honest. I used to think it were worthless. I thought it was completely a waste of time. And I thought it was just like a tantrum. That was my initial thought. Like when Trump was elected and everyone went out and like smashed Starbucks and like, just like screamed at the sky and just like put their middle fingers up and like, I'm so mad. Um, but I've changed my tune a little bit. I think it does have value to protest. And I think that value is mostly showing other people that are at home that think the same way that you do that there's more of you out there. And I think that's valuable. Where it's like, oh man, like I hate Donald Trump, but I'm alone. But I just saw this big protest that says like all these people in the street hate Donald Trump. And it gives confidence to people that think the same. And I think that's valuable. I don't think riots and looting and carnage and violence is valuable. I think that whoever is protesting in that way on either side loses credibility because then the other side can be like, oh, look how violent they are. Whatever they support must be bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think protests that have specific goals are also valuable. Like you look back to the civil rights era, the Martin Luther King protests
Mm-hmm.
and the organized marches they did, all very peaceful, and they had very specific goals. They wanted better voting rights, better circumstances for them, and they want to kind of get rid of the Jim Crow
Mm-hmm.
era regulations. Whereas now, I haven't really seen, besides I guess defunding the police, but I just hear a bunch of things about protesting against the system, but nothing really specific in the system. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, the system is racist. Okay, well, what do you want to change in it? Oh, well, it's just racist. That I haven't really heard anyone bring up anything specific that
Yeah.
needs to be changed. Any specific policies that are discriminatory or really anything inhibiting people of color or that kind of thing. So it's I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of defeating the purpose of protest.
Well, you're totally right. And when they do say specific things, we try and change them. Like again, I don't have a problem with the fact that they are protesting, but I agree with you where it's just like, take down the system, burn down the house. It's like, okay, like we can't just like, what does that mean? What is the system? Are you talking about like the legal system? The legal system is vast and complicated. And they're like, no, this specific law. Okay, that specific law, you're right. Like with Black Lives Matter, when they first came out, it was the specific officer, right? Like the guy who put his knee on his neck and was like choking him and everything. And that actually worked, right? Because it's like, well, this officer, we specifically want this guy to pay for the thing that he did. And he did, right? I haven't really followed it that closely, but I know that he went to jail. I think he got convicted. I don't really know how it ended up, but because I don't follow that kind of stuff that closely. But that was like the right idea. But when you just like kind of go out and like just like wave signs and you're just, like angry, it does help on the side of unity. Like I said, like, hey, all these people think alike. We're not alone. That's powerful. But sometimes, like, yeah, like the racist system, like, hey, what do you want me to do about it? Like, what can I change? I'm on your side. What's racist? I'll change it right now. And then a lot of times, like, it's hard to answer that question.
Yeah. And I think it's, I don't know, maybe laughing is not the best response, but the really only examples that people bring up are past examples of racism. It's like, oh yeah, because America was founded on slavery and there was Jim Crow. It's like, okay, yes, but that is all long since gone. What specifically now?
Yeah.
Like if you have to go back 60 years to find the nearest example of systemic racism, that means we live in a pretty non-racist system.
Well, yeah. And especially when yeah, like the stuff I can't handle is the hyperbole when they talk about it. Like, America is the most racist country right now in the history of the world. It's like, America's not even as racist as it was 100 years ago, first off. America is nowhere near as racist as other countries in the world right now. And it's for sure not more racist than those countries 100 years ago. Um, like, I get the disparity. It's like we were talking about with the wealth. Like, there is a disparity. There is a disparity between Jeff Bezos, like $1 trillion man. And when you look at only the disparity, you start to feel like, you're like, what the heck? I like can minimum wage. I'm making $7.50 an hour. How can this guy be $1 trillion man? And that there's some like truth to that, right? Like that is an unfair disparity. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the system is unfair. And even if it does mean the system is unfair, what's the alternative? Like ripping down the system and creating anarchy wouldn't be better for the guy who's making $7.50 an hour either. It
Right.
it seems like almost every step we take down the rich or to take down the powerful or whatever ends up hurting the very people that it's trying to help and helping the people it's trying to hurt. Like look at the lockdown, for example. It's like we need to, it's like look at all these rich people in power, like all this is going on and they like totally demolish all the small businesses. Like a small business can't make it through a lockdown like a Walmart or
Mm-hmm.
like an Amazon. In fact, Amazon has exploded because of the lockout.
I bet.
So it's
Yeah.
like, it's just funny. It's like it's like you can claim to be for the little guy, but sometimes the actions, do speak louder than words, especially with the lockdown.
hmm It was kind of, um, what's the word? It was, I hadn't really thought about that too much until the other day when Dad was reading off a list of a bunch of companies that had gone bankrupt. And they were massive companies, or they were well-known companies. Like, for instance, Cirque du Soleil filed for bankruptcy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, whoa, like this is really having an effect on a lot of small businesses.
Hmm. Yeah. How many people like opened a boutique, in a city, and they spent their life savings and it was their dream, and they finally had the courage to do it, and then got locked down and they lost everything.
Right.
It's just weird. It's a
Yeah.
weird time period.
For real.
Makes you wonder what's going to happen next. I am so grateful for history. We were talking about Russia, and because it feels like it would be so easy to make crazy assumptions, but because of history, we can see what's happened in the past and we don't have to make the same mistakes. It would be so easy, I feel like, to think revolution. Like so many people have said, and people literally come out and said, like, we need to revolt against the system, tear down the top. It's like, okay, but look back in history. When the disparity is so great and you tear down the top, the French Revolution, the Communist Revolution, in Venezuela, it's like it hasn't worked. We have enough awareness to know what's not going to work. And so thank goodness for history that we're able to always be counterbalancing these points of views and not get too excited or invested in these ideas before we check if they've worked in the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a sad reality that there will always be some form of disparity, no matter circumstances. Because some people are smarter than others, some people are just luckier than others, some people are more talented, some people work harder. Um, and so in every system, there's been disparities. So tearing down one type is just going to create another one in a different way.
Yeah. And it's not fair. Like, it's not completely fair. And, I acknowledge that. And there's corruption too. It's not just like all these hardworking angels ended up as, the business leaders of the United States, and all the dumb poor people ended up impoverished. It's not that. Like, there's all kinds of corruption, and there's illegal activity, and there's, but again, I just always go back to, like, okay, you're right, but so what? Like, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be a disparity basically no matter what you do. And like, the harder you try and force the system, it, like, I don't know, it just doesn't work. There's just too many different types of people out there to try and force a system that one select group of people decides how it works. Like, we're
Right.
going to sell the essentials. Like, what I remember from my history class is that the fall of the Soviet Union was because of, like, TV or something, or coffee, something like that. I remember hearing that Soviets at the time were jealous of the United States because of the types of coffee that they had, something like that. I might be making up the product, but there was a specific product. And they were like, well, our government, we have like the elite who decide what products we want and in what quantity. And they're like, hey, we're going to buy toilet paper and you're going to watch this specific program on TV, and we're going to have like rice and beans, like all the important things, and we'll get it from the farmers. We'll get everything, we know what's best. And this is what you can buy. In the United States, like, the market isn't perfect, but like, we don't really know what we want the most. There's no group of elites that could come out and say, like, these are the products you want, so we'll manufacture them. And these are the resources that you need, so we'll make them. Don't worry, we got it all figured out. Because, like, things like we don't, if we knew, if there was a group of people who knew what everyone wanted, then those people would make businesses and become billionaires like they have already. Like something like Vine didn't work, but TikTok worked. Why? You know,
Yeah.
like something like MP3 player didn't work, but the iPod worked. It's just, it's complicated. You know, there's just so many different, the market is so hard to figure out. How can we trust it to a small group of elected officials that are going to know what's best for us? That just doesn't add up in my head.
Right. And then how are you expected to choose those officials?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of people that are power hungry. I don't want to believe that people like Mussolini or Hitler or Stalin just stopped being born after World War II.
Right.
There's still people like that exist. And I don't know, I feel like that kind of system is more easily taken advantage of when you
Mm-hmm.
have such a small people that hold all the power and decide what everyone else gets.
Yeah, like with a communist system, you know, like a commune, like if it was a group like the hippies back in the 70s and 60s, like if you have a group of people who all decide that they want to live a certain way and they create like a cult or a religion or something like that, and you can actually do it, right? Like if I go out and get 15 friends and I pick my friends based on our matching ideologies, and I say all of us are going to make this communist um, house, and we're going to live here, we're going to share everything, we're all going to work, and we're all going to share everything we get from work and all of our wealth so that we can all thrive together. And one guy breaks his leg, we'll all work harder because you might break your leg next month. And that's fine. And I actually do think that that would work. But the problem is, in that same house, once one guy is not on board, then it completely falls apart. It's like, oh, we're all working for, we'll all put our money into one pot. Okay, I'll stop. Because now I don't have to work and I can get everything from the one pot, you know? Or like, I'm sick, I'll always be sick. Sweet. I can still get the same amount of money as the guys that are working. Um, and that's the problem. Like if you take everyone's guns away, it only takes one person who is crazy and is violent and has guns to dominate everyone else. That's the problem I keep running into. It's like the ideal is a correct ideal a lot of the time. Like guns are bad. Like no, maybe not guns are bad. Guns kill people is correct, right? And guns have caused a lot of harm is correct. And sharing is good and community is good. Those are all good ideals, but trying to be forced down the throat of human nature where not all humans are good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't always add up. It's like if you take all the guns from the good people, who has all the guns?
Yeah.
Now, I know it's not that simple. I know that there's more nuance to it, and I don't totally understand it. But some piece seems to be missing.
Yeah, and that's another thing where, like, yeah, maybe we can have more regulations for who can buy guns, some kind of training involved with purchasing a firearm. But the argument has just been swung so far one way, where it's like, okay, all guns illegal, no one has guns. But when has more laws stopped people from breaking them?
Yeah,
You know?
think about prohibition. Like
Yeah.
when we got rid of alcohol and it's like became the most crime-ridden time period in American history, and Al Capone like surged, you know, like I wish there was a way to, well, I don't know if I wish this. What a better way to say it is there isn't a way to change human nature so far to the point where no one will ever be tempted to break laws. And
Yeah.
in fact, that's not really even what you want, right? I mean, if you were able to do that, that's what Satan wanted to do, right? No more agency.
Yeah. And, even good law-abiding Americans, I guarantee you every single American has sped at some point on the road, even though it's clearly posted there that that's the speed you're supposed to go. I guarantee you everyone has sped. It's like something so simple, and yet everybody breaks that law.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows like, yeah. I don't know.
What is the form of government now in Russia? Do you know?
I'm not entirely familiar. I did need to research more because we weren't super involved with politics while we were there.
Right.
But I know they have a president. Putin has been president for like 20 something years. um, I heard a lot of things that they have a constitution as well. And I heard a lot of things about how people were upset that they believed they had American help writing the Constitution.
What do you mean?
So like, I remember seeing this protest on the street one time where these people had this sign. And it's like American aid on the Constitution. Like, this Constitution isn't really ours; it is from a foreign government.
Hmm.
Besides that, I don't know a whole lot about how the government works. I've heard a lot of opinions, both good and bad, about Putin. I've heard some people have very poor opinions about the government as a whole. So apparently, after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of chaos, of course, and I think a lot of things were ruled mostly by the mob, which makes sense in an anarchist society. The mob would take control,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently a lot of the people who were in the mob then became the political officials, the governing officials.
Interesting. Is that the KGB? Is that different? No, that's like the government, like sanctioned,
Yeah, like the police kind of.
like a Russian mafia, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you think that there's still, I mean, I guess there's no way to know, but you think that there's still like Russian influence or Russian mafia influence in the government?
Yeah, I don't know. But I do know that Putin he's very interesting how he's maintained authority. It's like he was president for the number of terms. And so they do have like a kind of a term limit, but only in a row. So you can only serve a certain amount of terms in a row. And so he did that. He stepped down and became the prime minister while somebody else was president for a term. And then after that, he was the president again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how long is a term?
I don't know. I have to research more again.
That's interesting. Can you imagine if like Trump was the president and then he became the vice president and then he became the president again?
Right.
I guess we have term limits, but I've heard that he's going to run again in 2024.
Really?
Oh man, here we go again.
That would be crazy.
Oh, that would be crazy. Oh my gosh. I kind of cut you off earlier. What do you think is inaccurate about the stereotypes about Russia?
I don't know. I never saw a bear.
What? Were you really in Russia?
And the people actually, they're not mean. I think there's kind of a stereotype of Russians are like super mean. But for the most part, people were really, really kind. They're always willing to help. And they're pretty friendly once you'd start them up. Like, there's kind of like a hard shell at first. Once you get someone talking, they were super friendly, super willing to help, for the most part, at least.
Is there something that you miss about Russia?
Sometimes I miss how genuine people were. Like the perfect example, my first companion that I lived with, we were at one of our friends' houses there, and we were showing pictures of us when we were younger. And he was showing pictures when he was in high school. And the lady was like, "Oh wow, like you were fat." Like at first, like we probably think that would be kind of rude, but they just like a lot of people, they would just say exactly how things were. They wouldn't try to sugarcoat things or make you feel good about yourself. They just tell you how it is, and I really liked it. It was kind of a breath of fresh air.
That's awesome. They do that in Brazil too. They had a very specific way of speaking that we don't have in the United States, where it's in Spanish too, where you can call someone like, "Oh, hey, e aí, gordinho," which means like fatso, basically, but it's like endearing in their language, you know. And so you get humbled pretty quick, because I got called both on my mission. I got called fatso and skinny guy because I lost so much weight. Like, e aí, magrinho. And you're just like, oh yeah. Like, it's basically if someone walks in like, hey, you skinny bag of bones, you know?
Yeah, and then the other side of that is that when someone gives you a compliment, you know that they actually mean it. Because if they didn't mean it, they would tell you what they actually thought. It's like
Yeah.
I had some people when I would try to speak to them, be like, "Wow, you are terrible at speaking Russian." Like, like, and then later, as I got to learn more, people were like, "Wow, like you speak really well." And then I was able to know that they actually believed that I spoke well.
Yeah. That is a really good way to feel confident about something, is when you get a compliment from someone that's usually like very brutally honest.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Patrick, I know you have to go. You have an appointment with the missionaries, but thanks for jumping on. We should do this again for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun to talk.
Yeah, let's do it again. We'll figure out another time.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your Sunday.
You too,
We'll
Patrick. Talk to you
see you.
later.
Yeah, bye.